Hi, I'm Melanie, and you're about to watch a message that was preached here at Calvary Fellowship in Miramar, Florida. At Calvary, we exist to help you take your next step in your relationship with God, and we pray that this message helps you do just that.
All right, how's everybody doing? So, did you guys get a cupcake? Did you guys get one anyway? Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I turned 45 years old today. Thank you. I can assure you, you're more excited about it than I am. I woke up this morning and my daughter asked me, she's like, "Dad, you're 45. How do you feel?" And I said, "It hurts." And I did what every 45-year-old did when they woke up this morning, and I took 3 Advil. And now I feel great now. I feel great now, at least for 6 hours. But anyway, and I will say this, you know, there's some amazing people that serve in our cafe and made hundreds of cupcakes for you guys to enjoy. So I hope that you thank these really awesome people, and that you enjoy the cupcakes that I can't have because they're full of sugar and carbs and joy and other things. So I'm just going to watch you take every little bite. Just going to watch you. Not to be weird. Maybe even smell yours before you eat it. So my son Xander is 9, and so this is a couple years back. He was about 5 at this time, and we were in the process of building this building. So I was here every day, you know, all day, pretty much 7 days a week, especially in the final few months of this building getting built. And he was getting on my case. He said I was working too much, and so I was leaving to come here. And he's like, "Dad, you're going to work again. When are we going to spend some time together?" So that Friday, I said to him, and I said, "Look, Zan, how about tomorrow, Saturday, we spend the whole day together, just you and me?" And he said, "All right, can I just have $20 instead?" "No, you can't have $20 instead. I thought that you wanted to spend time together. You know, you, me, just the boys." He's like, "All right, well, will you give me $20 if I spend the day with you?" I'm like, "No, I'm not going to give you $20. So anyway, so we spend the day together on Saturday anyway, sans payment. And then Monday morning, I'm headed here. And he pulls out this book, and he says, "Dad, if I read this book, can I have some money?" And now you got to understand is that, now this is one thing we do in our house. We do pay our kids to read because that's going to like have good dividends later on. And so because how it worked for Zan is that when he was 3, we put him in K3, but he already knew how to read. So the kids are learning the letters of the alphabet, and he's already reading like kindergarten level books. So they put him in K4 when he was 3. And so anyway, so now he's 9 and he's doing 5th grade work. But back when he was 5, he pulls out a 70-page book that has no pictures in it. And it's about a 3rd grade reading level. And he's like, "How much would you give me if I read this book?" And I'm thinking like 70 pages with no pictures. I know some adults that couldn't plow through that. So I'm like, "I'll give you $1 a chapter." So, and I'm thinking like maximum I'm going to spend $1 on this, you know. So nonetheless, he calls me about 2 p.m. "Dad, I finished the book. When can I expect my $8 payment?" And I'm like, "You're 5. You're not a bill collector. And so if you could stop talking like that, you're freaking me out. And put your mom on the phone." So Carrie gets on the phone, and she says, "Bob, he read the whole book." And I'm like, "Okay, tell him to explain the story to you." Because it's like you can flip the pages. Like, listen, I was young once too. I know how to, you know, anyway. So have him explain the story. She's like, "He already did. He understood the book." Put him back on the phone. Gets on the phone, and I'm like, "Okay, Zan, your mom's going to give you the $8. But if I can just ask, why do you need this money?" And he says, "Okay, do you remember when we were at Toys R Us on Saturday, when we just spent the day together?" "Yeah." He says, "Well, when I was there, I saw this game that Mia and Olivia would really love, and so I wanted to get the money so I could buy it for them." disgusting, you know? And I'm like, so the whole time you've been wanting to earn money so you could spend it on your sisters while I've been busting your chops? I'm sorry, buddy. He says, oh, thanks, Dad. By the way, what does bust your chops mean? Bust your chops means that I'm a good dad. Okay. Thanks for busting my chops, Dad. There's more where that came from, kid. And here's the point, right, is that my son was doing the exact opposite of what we do many times. A lot of times, and listen, if we can be honest, we talk a really good game about love and loving people and the people that we love the most. We talk a good game. But Xander was doing the opposite. He was simply not talking about love. He wanted to express it. And sometimes what we do is we think that the idea of love gets us out of actually doing the actions of love. And really, it's the opposite that's true, that love inspires us to do more. Because it's never, when you think about what the rule is or what the law is, love never allows us to do less. Instead, what love does is that it always propels us to do more. And so Jesus challenges his disciples. Jesus, on the night that he was betrayed, he has this meal with his disciples. And he must have blown their minds when he said to them that he was, hey, I want to give you a brand new commandment. And I'm sure that, these are nice Jewish boys. They grew up learning all 613 commands. And they're like, so this is 614? And it's not. What he was doing is he was taking all 613 and reducing them down to one. And what was it? And here's what he says up on the screen. He says, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. Now, if you're a Bible student or you've been around the Bible for a little bit or been around church, you probably realize this, that love one another is not a new thing. In fact, you can read all through the Bible, there's the command to love one another. However, Jesus adds this little addendum to it that changes the game completely. He says, love one another as I have loved you. And that changes the game, because now we're not just loving arbitrarily. That is, I love who I want, when I want, if I want, when I want. Instead, now it's I love as Jesus has loved me. Well, how did Jesus love you and love me? He sacrificed himself and died for us sacrificially. And what you'll find is throughout the New Testament, when we are called to love, and it talks about the actions of love, it never refers back to law. It always refers back to this moment where Jesus sacrificed himself for us, that we love in the way that he loved us. So we've been in this series, and if you're just with us now, like, hey, so what have you guys been doing here teaching? We've been working our way through verse by verse the greatest sermon ever given. It's called the Sermon on the Mount, and it is a message that Jesus gave to these thousands of people that were following him. And so we're going to kind of, in some ways, be picking up in the middle of a conversation where Jesus is quoting the Hebrew Scriptures. He's quoting the Old Testament, and he's saying, hey, this is what the law says, but this is what I'm saying to you. This is what the law says, but love demands a little bit more. And he's going to talk about these moments in life where we need a little bit of wisdom. And that is, what does love, we know that love demands more, but what does love require in these certain moments? And so for many of us, listen, whether it's in our marriages, our relationships, our friendships, our family, sometimes they suffer because we're operating based on love operating based on law rather than based on love. And the thing is that love always does more than the law requires. But how does that reality work practically? What does love require for me in my daily life as I'm going about my business? How do I put that into practice? And what Jesus is going to do is he's going to give us 3 examples, 3 scenarios where he's going to show us what love requires in those moments. And so if you're in a relationship and you're married or you're friends with someone and you have this moment where you've got to speak truth, how do you do that in a way that strengthens the relationship rather than destroys the relationship? Jesus has something to say about that. If you're in a relationship with someone or have a family member who is very demanding, and by the way, this is not a moment for elbows. You just acknowledge it without like, yeah, what's up? Talking about you, bozo. Jesus is going to talk about that. If you're in a situation that is a bit adversarial right now, Whether that's with a former spouse, a former coworker, a friendship that went sideways, Jesus is going to speak to us in that regard. So I'd love for you to open with me, if you have your Bible, to the Gospel of Matthew chapter 5. If you don't have your Bible, don't worry about it. The outline that we gave you when you came in has every verse that we're going to cover. Or you can grab your phone, download the Calvary app, and you can download the notes. And if you're like, paper conscious and you're a lover of trees, that'll help you, because then again, the outlines are already printed, but it'll at least make you feel better that you didn't use up a piece of paper. But anyway, so moving on with that. So we're going to start in verse 33. Here's what we read. He says, "Again, you have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform your oaths to the Lord. But I say to you, do not swear at all, neither by heaven, for it is God's throne, nor by earth, for it is his footstool, nor by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. Nor shall you swear by your head, because you cannot make one hair white or black." Of course, that's before Lady Clairol came into the picture. "But let your yes be yes, and your no, no, for whatever is more than these is from the evil one." Now, if you pause there and give me your attention, what does love require in this moment? Love requires, if you're a note taker, that I speak honestly. Now, the challenge that we have is that sometimes telling the truth is difficult. And it's not that we want to lie, because I think we all recognize that we don't want to lie, but what we'll do is we'll kind of skirt the truth. And we'll just kind of speak based on, technically. So somebody says, "Hey, we're doing this thing and we'd love for you to come by and spend several hours in something that's really not very exciting or entertaining." But they don't say it like that. They're like, "Hey, we'd love for you to come by. It's going to be awesome." But it's not going to be awesome. And you're like, "Oh, wow, that's so nice. Yeah, maybe we could, yeah, it's possible. Let me check the calendar. Check with my wife. Let me see if the planets are aligning for me." And it's like, we're saying that, but like, we know it's not happening. But once again, we're just like, "Yeah, I'm not, there's like zero chance of me going, but I don't want to actually tell you that I'm not going." And what happens is, and here's the point, what happens is that sometimes we lie to people, and we lie to people just to save their feelings. And I suppose that there's a way that's honorable to a degree, but what we do is that we end up dishonoring them because we're saying that they lack the maturity to handle the truth. And listen, you struggle with that as a kid, and we struggle with that all through adulthood. And I remember when my son had just started crawling, and so he was probably 9 months old. My daughter Mia was still 3; she wasn't even 4 yet. And Mia couldn't be happier when her brother was born, because basically it was like she had all these dolls to play with, and now she had like a living doll to play with, which was Xander. And so she would just drag him wherever she wanted to go. She would just take him, and then, you'd hear him like screaming for help. And so anyway, but she would try to pick him up. And in our house, we had this rule that 3-year-olds don't get to pick up not yet 1-year-olds, lest the 1-year-old has to go to urgent care. So that was kind of our thing. And so anyway, but she had a hard time obeying this rule to not pick him up. And so she would do it when we weren't looking. So one day, Carrie steps out. I'm watching the 2 kids, and I walk out of the room. They're in the living room. I walk out of the room, and I say, "Mia, don't pick up your brother." I walk out. 2 minutes later, I hear Xander, screaming for his life. And I walk in, and Xander is now on the couch, crawling on the couch. And I go over, I put him on the ground, and I say, "Mia, how did your brother get on the couch?" I don't know. I don't know. I mean, who can know such things? And I'm like, "Mia, there's only 3 ways that this could have happened. Let's run through them together." So I said, number 1, you picked him up. Number 2, in addition to learning to crawl, he's also learning to fly. Number 3, human teleportation. Which do you think it was? "Flying, Dad. I think he's learning to fly." And I mean, like, straight to my face. And it's like, I mean, she was willing to think, like, yeah, I think he's growing wings, rather than just own the truth. And this is the challenge, is that, and we'll do this And this in Jesus' day, what would happen is, now we'll talk about, well, technically I didn't say that I would. I just said that I wouldn't. And that's different than if you really define that word, possibly, and we make up all these technicalities, when in Jesus' day, what would happen is that people would say, hey, you said you were going to do that, but you didn't do it. And they would say, yeah, but I didn't swear that I would do it. Hey, you swore that you'd do it. Yeah, but I didn't swear. I swore by the temple, but not the gold of the temple. And it's like, really? That's how we're splicing this? And that's the thing that was happening. And here's what happens is that Jesus is saying, listen, your yes has got to be yes and your no has got to be no. Why? Because that's what love requires. Listen, when you got married, you made a promise before God to stay together no matter what. And your commitment was, we're going to stay together and there's no plan B. And what you learned was, if you've been married for any length of time, you learned that falling in love is easy. You can fall in love with anyone. In fact, you can fall in love with someone you don't even know. You ask any middle school girl her feelings about Ed Sheeran. And they're like, oh, but Ed, it's like the voice of an angel speaking to me. And I know he looks like Ron Weasley, but it just melts my heart. And it's like, you've never even met him. I know, but I love him. I know. It's like, and why? Because falling in love is easy. Staying in love, now that's another thing. Staying in love is the tricky part because it has nothing to do with feelings and everything to do with actions and intentionality. And it has to do with yes being yes, no fingers crossed, and no technicalities. And see, that's why in the book of Proverbs it would tell us this, that faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. Listen, when we aren't honest with each other, we create separation in our relationships. And that separation, there's like little things that get into, that kind of get in there. These issues start to build up in us and around us and between us. And then when relationships come to an end, and whether you've experienced it or you've walked through with someone who's experienced it, you know this to be the case. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. Where what'll happen is you say, yeah, but what happened? And they'll say, well, it wasn't one thing, it was like a million little things. But we never talked about those things. And so what happened is those little things started snowballing and turned into an avalanche. And then it began to spin out of control. And what love requires, listen, what love requires is that we do something, we do what's uncomfortable in the moment, so there can be greater joy in the relationship later. Well, Jesus goes on and he says this. He says, you've heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. But whoever slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other to him also. If anyone wants to sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak also. And whoever compels you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to him who asks you, and from him who wants to borrow from you, do not turn away. And if you pause there and give me your attention, what does love require? Love requires that I receive respect, because there cannot be love without respect. Now, I want you to understand this because, and here's the thing we have to understand, is that you and I are 2,000 years and half a world away from when these words were originally spoken. And the challenge is that because we are Westerners in the 21st century, we don't understand the context of being a first century person in a Jewish Eastern culture. And that's why we actually read these verses and we think that when somebody hits you, it should be okay if they hit you again. And I guess if they hit you again, it's okay. And it's just, this verse means that if you really want to walk with God, you need to be a doormat. And here's the reality is the verses are actually saying the exact opposite. That we are to be treated with respect as equals no matter who we're talking to. So allow me to explain so we can understand what the verses mean. So first, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth it comes from Exodus 21, and it was established, remember, when Israel came out of Egypt, they were slaves. what God was doing on the way from Egypt to the land of promise. He wasn't just taking the people out of Egypt. He was taking Egypt out of them. And what he was doing was helping to establish a nation for these people to be able to govern themselves. To govern themselves, they needed laws. One of these laws was an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. This limited personal vengeance, so that now it gave the courts the ability to mete out justice. Because if you and I are being honest, if someone were to poke your eye out, you're not just going to go for one eye. Somebody pokes your eye, you're going for two. And then that guy is going to be like, all right, I poked your eye out, my bad. But now you poked out both of my eyes out, so now I'm going to poke your other eye out, and I'm chopping your arm off. And then when you're like, okay, well, you poked out both of my eyes and my arm. I've still got one good arm, and it's just a flesh wound. So anyway, I appreciate the 8 of you that got that Monty Python reference. I've been working with that all morning, and I've been sticking with it all day, because I thought somebody is going to get it, and whoever it is around here that got it, I just want to say thank you. To the rest of you, you have homework. Anyway, so what happens is, now the whole point is that it just keeps escalating until one or both people are dead. So what happens? So what it does is it prevents this. The governing law was there to bring justice, balance, and limit retribution. But Jesus is now taking a law that was meant for governing, and he takes it to a law that was meant to create balance and justice, and he now brings it personally with how do we create balance in an interpersonal way. See, eye for an eye is all about justice, but the best the law can do is get us even. Only love can win the relationship. So let me explain. I have 3 kids, as you know. Mia is 11, Xander is 9, Livy is 6. And so my house, for the most part, and my role as a dad is kind of like being the perpetual referee at a hockey game. You know, I'm breaking up fights, I'm calling timeouts, I'm sending people to the penalty box, and then I have to keep a lot of batteries on hand. That's what people ask me, like, I'm going to be a dad, would you have any advice for me? And I'm like, you know, make sure you know how to open bottles that stick, and keep a lot of batteries on hand, and you're going to be a champ. I mean, because that's pretty much what they're coming to you for. Can you open this? Can you fix this? Why does this not work anymore? Pop in a couple double A's, and you're going to be a champ. Anyway, so now one of the things that we do is that all of my kids have a chair in their room so that when they do something wrong, you know, they go to like this timeout kind of thing. And can I be honest with you? I mean, I think a lot of us are parents here. I don't even understand how that strategy works. It does work, but I don't even understand how it works. It's like, you did something wrong. I want you to go to the room with all your toys and things that you like and think about what you did. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go have fun. I mean, think about what I've done wrong. I mean, it just doesn't even make any sense. I wish my mom and my stepdad had known about timeout when I was growing up. We didn't have timeout. We had knockout, but that's another thing. So it was a different thing. So anyway, but one of the things, so at our house, one of the things that our kids have to do when they get into a fight is they have to apologize. They have to say, I'm sorry, do you forgive me? And then the other person has to say, I forgive you. And then they have to hug for 20 seconds. Now that's because and then if they count too fast, we double the time. All right? And people say parents don't have fun. Anyway, so that's how we roll at our house. So this is a while back. This is a couple years ago. All 3 of them, now typically it's usually 2 of them. I had a situation where all 3 of them got into a fight. And they got into this big argument. So what happens is that they're all playing together, and Xander does something that Livy doesn't like, so Livy punches Xander. Xander is a boy. He knows he's not allowed to hit his sisters, so he takes something and throws it. But he thinks it's Livy's, it's actually Mia's. Mia gets upset, so now Mia's upset that Xander broke something of hers. Xander is upset that he got punched by his sister. Livy's upset that Xander's done something to her to make her want to take a swing at him. So Xander comes out and he starts telling me the story. Livy realizes she's getting found out and she goes, I'm going, and just goes straight to her chair in her room. I'm like, Carrie, they're disciplining themselves. If we can just teach them how to cook, we don't even have to take them on vacation with us. They can create this little Children of the Corn society until we get back. By the way, I'm really concerned a lot of you got that Children of the Corn joke. And so those of you, I never saw that. No, I'm not going to recommend you watch that. Anyway, you do something different than watch Children of the Corn. And the rest of you, read your Bible. It's messed up. But I will say this. Can I say I'm glad there's a place where weirdos like us can all get together and feel okay, all right? So that's, Calvary's that place. So I'm happy about that. So anyway, so nonetheless, so Carrie gets up and says, and I'm like, Carrie, look, I'm gonna deal with this. And I'm thinking the first one already took care of it herself. She already punished herself. I'm like, how hard can this be? So now I'm in the hallway by our living room, and I'm talking to the two of them, and they're telling me what happened, and that, then Xander threw this thing, and then Mia got mad, and so now, what I meant to say, now this is a very important fact, because I didn't say what I meant to say, and that's when everything went crazy in my house. But I meant to say something good. I meant to identify with Mia's pain. And what I meant to say was, now Mia, I know you want to hit your brother. That's what I meant to say. The problem is, what I said was, Mia, do you want to hit your brother? And so because I said, Mia, do you want to hit your brother? Xander was like, wait, what? And in that split second, before I could bring those words back, Mia cocked back. Boom! And I mean, Xander goes back. I mean, it was like Rocky Balboa in the first fight with Clubber Lang in Rocky III. And I'm hearing Apollo Creed, there is no tomorrow. There is no. And I have most of that movie memorized. And I see him go down. I'm seeing him go down. And I'm like, what's happening here? Anyway, he's going down. First of all, Mia's got quite a punch. And part of me was like, wow. I mean, those karate lessons have really paid off. And then for the other kid, I'm like, dude, my bad on that. That's on me. Anyway, so my wife gets up, and she steps in realizing I'm not equipped to handle disputes of this magnitude. And she does something. Now, I'm trying to, and I'm like, I know you're upset. I know you're mad. And I'm trying to somehow acknowledge that. My wife steps in, and this is why I like to tell people she's the professional parent. She's like Tom Brady, and I'm like the backup quarterback that only comes in to hold the ball when people are kicking extra points. You know what I mean? So anyway, so she comes in, and she's like, you're going to do this, and you're going to, of course, that's when Xander was conscious again. And so, no, that poor kid, man, that was on me. I'm like, dude, it's on me. I owe you ice cream. Anyway, so she stands up, and what she does is, this is the thing that's amazing. She takes the two of them and makes them each do something nice for each other. And that's the whole thing, everything's good. That kindness did something that no amount of revenge could ever accomplish. And this is the point that Jesus is making. This is why in the New Testament book of Romans, it says this, never pay back evil with more evil. Do things in such a way that everyone can see that you are honorable. And so Jesus, what he's doing, as he talks about, for there to be love, there has to be respect. He illustrates to us in three ways that these people in this culture would understand. He talks about Roman soldiers. He says, if someone compels you to go 1 mile. In this culture, a Roman soldier could take any citizen or any citizen of one of the areas that they had conquered and compel them to carry their bags for 1 mile. And the soldiers in the Roman Empire lorded it over the people that they could do that. And so, but Jesus says, if someone forces you to go 1 mile, go 2. Why? Because when you walk the 2nd mile by choice, now both of them become by choice. And now I'm no longer your servant that is being forced to serve you. Now I'm your equal who's helping you. Like, oh, the mile's over. You don't have to. No, man, I'm headed this way. You look like somebody that could use help. Like, what? No, and why? Now you're equals. Now, so here's the one, the turn the other cheek verse. I mean, what does that mean? If someone slapped you in the face, which by the way is the equivalent of being spit in the face in that culture, why would you give them the other cheek to hit? And here's the reason why. First, Roman soldiers, just like most people, in that culture, most Roman soldiers were right-handed. Like most people are right-handed. Only 1 in 250 people are like me, left-handed. And so when a Roman soldier went to hit someone, when they were in a fight, they would take a swing with their right hand, and when they were taking a swing, they would hit someone on the left. So they would come in, they would hit someone on the fight. But that's if they were in a fight with someone that they considered to be their equal. When they struck a person that they believed to be inferior to them, they wouldn't punch them. They would go like this and smack them across the face with the back of their hand. And so now that's why Jesus says specifically, if someone slaps you on your right cheek. So now you're smacking them because once again, in this Greco-Roman culture, they made a clear distinction between classes. So Roman soldiers backhanded their subjects to make a point, to say that they were second-class citizens compared to them. But Jesus says when somebody slaps you on your right cheek, tell them to hit you on your left, because in doing so, you are demanding that they treat you as an equal. You see, he goes on, he says, what about when someone takes your cloak? Now, you got to understand, this is one of these moments where the Bible's being very modest, because people only wore 2 things. They wore this outer cloak, which was like a jacket, and then they wore a tunic. And a tunic was basically like a really long T-shirt. And so it would almost be like, Jesus saying, if someone wants your jacket, give them your underwear too. I mean, because that's basically what it was. You wore a tunic and you wore a jacket. That's it. So he's like, why? Because now you're not taking it from me. I'm freely giving it to you. So if somebody wants your jacket, give them your underwear too. You got the fruit of the Spirit. Who needs the fruit of the loom? And so this is the point, is that kindness, which is the verb form, the action form of love, can do what revenge or retribution or eye for an eye thinking can never do. And look at what he says. This is the last part in verse 43. He says, you have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good. He sends rain on the just and on the unjust. For if you love those who love you, what reward have you? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet your brethren only, what do you do more than others? Do not even the tax collectors do so? Therefore you shall be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect. And if you pause there, last thing, what does love require? Love requires that I do good to all. You see, the Bible doesn't actually state what Jesus is saying, that you love your neighbor and hate your enemy. That's what the religious leaders had turned this particular verse to mean. And this is, I think, the thing that's important for us. They believe that you should love your neighbor as yourself. That didn't originate with Jesus. That's from the Old Testament scriptures. But there was another part which they interpreted to mean love your neighbors but hate everybody else. So here's the passage in Leviticus chapter 19. You shall not take vengeance, nor bear any grudge against the children of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. And they understood that to mean that you should love people who love God and hate anyone who's the enemy of Israel. The problem with that thinking is, how do you lead someone who doesn't love God or know God to be a lover of God? You've got to love them. And so if you're in your marriage, in your relationships, in your friendships, you have a choice to make. We have a choice to make. We either decide that we want to win the fight or we want to win the relationship, but we can't do both. And what will happen is sometimes we will get so fixated on being right and winning the battle that we miss what's most important. Listen, if you win and your spouse loses, you've both lost. And that's the thing. And this is why couples call it quits, because we get fixated on the rules. Even Christian people, they get fixated on just firing off and quoting Bible verses to each other, that we miss the point completely. That we can't experience the benefits of love when we're quoting the rules to each other. And this is why we have a hard time with difficult people at work, because we start quoting our job description and we can't see beyond that. Listen, hurt people. That's what they do. hurt people hurt people. And the only way to get hurt people to stop hurting people is to start loving them beyond what the rules require. And what we will do is that we will balk at these moments and say, yeah, but they don't deserve it. I know they don't deserve it. That's why it's love. That's why it's grace. Jesus invites us on a journey, not to just give everybody what they deserve, but to love people the way that he has loved us. Because being deserving isn't what repairs relationships. Loving kindness is what does. And listen, Jesus is telling us we can't live this way of this scorched earth philosophy thinking that it's going to bring good fruit into our lives. And here's what I know. All of us have a story to tell. And we have a story to tell of how we were wronged and how we were in the right to walk away and they did this thing and everyone will agree and nod and tell us that we were right. But all the while, the relationship is lost. Because you can't have the fruit of love when we're holding on to the letter of the law. Jesus invites us to a different journey. To love others as he's loved us. And that means that there's no loopholes and there's no workarounds and there's no one that gets excluded from that. When we love the way he loved us, listen, when we do that, the things that we had held on to that break relationships, we can let those go. And we start loving people and then we start seeing our relationships get healed. They start mending. They get whole. And they go further than we ever thought possible. Because we let go of the rule and started embracing something that was beyond the rule. That love required us to do more than the rule. Because that's what love requires of us. Let's pray together. And God, we want to thank you. Thank you for loving us. Thank you that love covers a multitude of sins. The scriptures teach us, and that love never fails. And so we pray, God, may we be an example of that. An example of what your son did for us, that we can love in the way that he loved us. Do that work in us, God. We know it's easier said than done. Help us to walk in that and watch what you can do when we leave the law and embrace what you have for us. And we pray it in Jesus' name, and everybody said, amen.
We hope you enjoyed today's message. If you decided to take your next step with God and follow Jesus, please visit mycalvary.com/begin. We have a free gift we'd love to give you. Also, please follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and also hit the subscribe button down below. From all of us here at Calvary, God bless you.